Uh-oh, somebody's got a stowaway. Here's a look at the new Mezco Toyz Alien Deluxe MDS Xenomorph. The hostile xenomorph features a hinged outer jaw with pop-out pharyngeal jaw inside and removable drool effects, interchangeable hands and legs, and posable tail. It includes also an overmorph egg that contains a posable facehugger, as well as interchangeable tops so the overmorph egg can take on both open and closed forms. The infant form of the xenomorph, the chestburster, is also included and has a posable tail. On my shelf space, no one will hear my figures scream, as eventually I will be putting the deluxe MDS Alien Xenomorph up there along with the rest of my collectibles. Before we get a closer look, though, at the brand new Mezco Toyz Deluxe MDS Alien, I'd like to also let you guys know that I did pick this one up over on Entertainment Earth's website. It's in stock currently right now. If you guys are interested and would like to get one for yourself, you can click the link down below in the video description. We're going to go ahead now and grab the tape measure just to see how tall the Xenomorph stands. Now, keeping in mind, the MDS figures are going to be oversized, slightly super stylized, especially with the larger head. And that makes for a figure that's only about 5.5 inches in height, with most of its size being its head. Flipping that around, it makes the figure of the Xenomorph about 14 centimeters tall. Some pretty interesting things do come include with the MDS Alien. First thing we'll have a look at is the overmorph egg, or alien egg. I don't know if you can tell, but there's a line right here because the top part of the egg actually does remove, and you can replace with the open version of that egg. It's got some decent molding all the way around. The thing, though, about it, because the top half does separate from the bottom, when you are putting it back in place, you're going to notice that there's some areas where the mold isn't going to line up, so you're going to want to keep spinning this around, spin, 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 until, of course, you got the proper mold line from top to the bottom. It's got some, like I said, decent mold. It's generally quite hollow. It's all cast here in a dark black plastic, kind of more of a blackish gray plastic, but they have actually added a little bit of brown in there as well, and, of course, you've got some additional purple that's been airbrushed in the middle also. Now, like I said, this does open up. You have two halves now, and you can take then the closed version of the egg and put it to the side, and instead bring in the open flapped version of, again, that same egg. And again, just line everything up. Not that you have to be a stickler for things to match up, but it drives me crazy if I can notice that something isn't quite right when it comes to these little bubbled blisters here on the side of the egg. But that's what it looks like with the open version of the egg. And then you can take one of the other included accessories, the cool looking face hugger, and this can actually sit inside. I know right now it doesn't look like it's going to be able to fit inside, but rest assured that the actual tail is a wire frame. I was actually a bit surprised to see that they didn't put any holes in the bottom. Generally, that is one thing that goes along with wire frames. It's not so the wire has to actually breathe. It's so that they can actually line it up in the mold, so the wire sits centered in the middle of whatever they're casting. That's what those holes are there. It's actually just because there's pins in, well, we're not going to spend a lot of time talking about that. Anyways, it does have a wire frame, so you can actually take that and tuck it inside of the open egg. And you can have it kind of popping out like that. It's the only thing that really is posable here on the face hugger. All the side limbs, the little appendages, are actually all just softer plastic. You can bend them, but they won't keep to any permanent position. And again, you got some nice sculpting on the inside of the face hugger. I do also like the fact that they've added a real clear coat to this. Really make it look wet and slimy. I'm going to put that to the side. If you prefer, though, your alien slightly more grown up, then there's also the chest burster variety as well. Now, this one, again, does have a wire frame, but nowhere anywhere on here can you actually see there's holes. They've added a nice coloring of just additional red, so it does look like it has exited somebody's lower half. And that looks really interesting. I really like the look and design of that. Obviously, you're not going to be putting that inside the egg, but it's a nice little posed piece. And again, because it does have the wireframe tail, you can kind of move that around. Kind of looks a little bit like Jabba the Hutt, to be honest. You got the little teeth there and a little blood off trail to the side of the corners of the mouth. A gruesome yet adorable little chest burster. I'm going to put that to the side also as well. Then for this side of the accessories, there are more things that can be swapped out and changed on the Xenomorph. One thing that's neat that they've actually included with it is a slimy little dripped area that actually goes to the bottom of its jaw. It kind of actually looks like a mouth guard. Maybe this is what kind of looks like a little mouth guard for the alien, doesn't it? But are these little hooks off to the side here. what you're going to do is you're going to open the mouth, and this just fits behind the back of the teeth. Just lines up just like that. Fits perfectly, actually. And you got the little bit of drool. I say a little bit of drool. That's a whole lot of drool coming out from the bottom of the mouth of the xenomorph. Definitely going to be the way I'm going to be displaying this. Figure also does have, I'm just going to put this to the side because I just don't want that to drop. Figure also comes included with a couple of swappable hands. As of right now, he only has relaxed hands, but if you want more gestured hands, then those are there as well. You can see there's some additional silver that they've afforded to the ends of the fingernails. And again, I like the gestures of these ones. These actually look a little bit nicer, to be all honest. Go ahead and just take the existing hands and just remove them, pop them right off the ball joint, and then find, I think they're pretty much the same. I don't think you'd be wrong to put them on either side, and just pop that back onto the ball joint, just like that. I'm going to keep one in, and I'll keep the other one relaxed so you can see the difference between the two. Yeah, I'm leaning more to that one as well myself. And then the last thing that's actually kind of interesting that comes included with this figure, we're going to kind of get to the full evolving of that. Actually, you know what? We'll do it in this part of the video anyways. It comes also with a crouched version of its body. Now, this is all staction. There's no articulation to speak of whatsoever, but it gives you a really cool crouched pose, sort of the way the xenomorph looks at the end of the film when it's hiding, stowing away when Ripley thinks she's done away with the big chap. He reveals, obviously, himself at the very end. And I really like that. I think that's a neat touch. There is a wireframe still to the tail, but there's no articulation to speak of here for the legs. Simply all you're going to do here in this case, take the top torso of the alien and just wiggle this entire body, just the lower half, just pop that right off, and then you just replace it, move the arms out of the way, just replace it with the crouched positioned alien, at least the lower half of it. And that's what it looks like. I'm just going to move the arms out of the way. The only downside to it is it has to balance all of it onto the weight of the tail. The curl of the tail is the thing that really does keep it intact because, of course, there is no posability at all here, 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 or here. And like I said, all of it is just going to be resting. It's more just a showpiece by this point. I kind of actually like that. I think it's cool. And it's the only few times I've actually seen a company actually include a second lower half of an alien that gives you a very distinct way of posing the figure. Let's go ahead now and just remove this. And we'll pop back in the defaulted lower torso and getting a closer look now at the alien. Now, the alien does have the open mouth and, of course, the smaller inner chompers. There is a button on the side, so you can push that out. Now, nowhere on the packaging, although I did have to look inside, there were eventually instructions when I did remove the plastic tray. But usually on the back, there would be a place that they would advertise that spring out feature. I would say if you did pick this figure up for yourself and there happens to be no instructions on the inside, the little button is just off to the side, but it's concealed so well with the rest of the tubes, you wouldn't even notice that's there in the first place. And then you can go ahead and just push that back into the mouth. Now, the thing about it, though, is while pushing it back in, I'm just going to pull it out so you can see what it looks like. It's a little prong like this, and there's a little button. Well, the button is on the side, but it pushes out this little ledge of plastic. And when you're putting this back in, I've noticed already several times now, I always have to put the inner jaw back in because it ends up falling out like this. And like I said, you can just close it up like that. Getting a closer look, though, at its head. Now, this is based on its big chap design. So the one thing about the original classic Alien was the fact it did have the clear dome. It's relatively nicely replicated. I'm actually just going to move the eggs out of the way here. Just don't want to distract for the rest of the review. But it does have the clear dome, so it does give you the opportunity to see more of a human skull on the inside of it. I think I would have darkened that just a little bit. I love the idea that they've actually would have gone the clear dome, but I think the skull is almost maybe a little bit too noticeable. I would have added just a darker, maybe a slight airbrushing. Not too much that would have hidden this because there's too good of a sculpt inside just to mask it all the way with paint. But I think it's almost too clear of a dome. It's the only thing I would say is just darken that just a slight bit here. Still where you can see the skull on the inside, but not too clear of what we got right here. The rest of the figure's body is actually pretty good if you are for the MDS design. Now, the thing about the MDS designs are usually smaller proportioned bodies, slightly oversized heads. It works quite well for an alien because it's already got an oversized head to start with, but I got to say, like, the proportions work quite well for a figure of this size and this kind of design. My only real criticism deals more with the articulation, and I will get more into that in a second. But overall, I'm really happy with the head sculpt. The sculpting on the side of the head just alone is really, really nicely handled. There really isn't a lot of paint. There probably could have been opportunities where they could have added a little bit of extra coloring onto at least the head. There does get a little bit of brown, for example, here just on the sides and on the tops of its forms. And there's a little bit also on its ribs and also in its legs. but it's so minuscule, you almost don't even notice it. I think they could have also added maybe just a little bit of purple or just a very faint dark blue, just a little bit something in there just to make it a little bit more of a contrast in color, because it almost seems a little bit like unfinished plastic to me. But like there's some decent articulation. We're going to talk more obviously about that in a second. Decent articulation for the head. I was actually kind of surprised to see that the head could move as well as it does, even for the fact it does have the spike, the notable spike that's on the back of the xenomorph. It's got, of course, all the tubes on the back of its torso also as well. And this one does have still the wireframe tail. Talking a little bit about the articulation, I'll tell you the one thing I'm not crazy about when it comes to this figure is the way they've designed the feet. This whole section right here, first of all, there's articulation here in the top of the torso, but pretty much from that point on, it's all just solid plastic until you get to the legs. The feet do swivel back and forth, but they don't swivel in such a way that the feet are completely flat. I mean, when you put it on a shelf, for example, you can already see one of the problems I'm dealing with here. This should have been ball jointed, not just peg jointed, because if you're pegging this only the way it is right now, there's no way you can adjust the legs. You can't swivel here. You can't swivel here. This is all just molded as a staction statue. So really you have to then compensate by moving the feet out. But because they're only on pegs, all you can do is this. You can't do this. This is really what it should have been in the first place, because unfortunately it doesn't make for a very leveled alien. And like I said, getting him to stand is actually more of a difficult time than I was expecting. I end up having to bring the tail down a little bit and sort of use that as a stabling crutch to prevent the figure from falling over. It's the only thing, I don't want to say it's a deal breaker because it's still a nice looking figure, but it certainly is one thing I think they really needed to fix, because having this just be pegged and not having the means to actually adjust the feet back and forth means that the feet are not flat, and they don't even give you a display stand either. For the articulation here on this guy, first of all, his head is on a ball joint, so it does rotate back and forth for the obvious reasons. There's going to be these little side parts that stick up from the shoulders. That's going to a little bit of the articulation, but you can still move the head up. You can move the head down. You rock it back and forth, and yeah, you could almost rotate it all the way around. Technically, we'll count this as articulation, so you can move the jaw back and forth, and yeah, that jaw still wants to pop out on me. The upper torso is on a ball joint. And it doesn't really matter, this part right here, obviously that's just going to be non-movable, but the arms do rotate all the way around. They hinge outward this way. And then there's a standard swivel here for the elbow. So you can either have like the arms straight, for example, as we've seen the case before with other MDS figures, like the Leatherface recently we just had a look at. They don't put a hinge joint here, but they do the next best thing. By making this a swivel on the angle that they do, you can either have the arm straight like this, or you just simply turn the arm at the elbow, and you've instantly got a bend. It's a good way to really work around the idea of not using a ball joint. And then, of course, the hands do work around all the way around on that peg joint, as we've already seen as we change the hand out on the one side here. Tail is on a wireframe. It certainly does come in handy. And as already mentioned, he only just has the peg joints here on his feet. Things I would fix on this figure, I'm overall pretty happy with it. I don't like how easy, I should say at least, the mouth pops out from the inside of his mouth, like the inner jaw. I don't know why they would have just had that as a separate piece, because the first time it falls out, it seems to want to fall out too frequently after that. And the biggest thing that is a detriment to this figure is the way they've pegged the feet. I don't want to spend a whole lot more time talking about it, but you already get my feelings of it. It's just way too unstable. Yeah, you can twist the feet, but because you can't move the legs, you can't move the knees. You have to do a balancing act. You keep having to move back and forth until you finally get it. If not for the tail being a wire frame, poor Xenomorph here would fall over a lot more than what he's done so far. This, I believe, if I'm taking tally, is now the 17th time we're going to try final looks here for the alien. I've decided, ill-advised, to have him actually swapped out with the crouched pose of the alien, but having it spinning around on a turntable like this, you can imagine that's probably not a good idea. All of the weight of the figure, keeping it balanced, is resting against those sharp toenails and the curve of the tail. If the tail wasn't posable, I wouldn't even probably try this. But yeah, this is probably the 17th time that I've tried to do the final looks of this figure, and he's fallen over every single time. Good, though, on Mezco's part to actually include two different ways of displaying the figure with having the permanently posed crouch position like this. It's not something that you really could be able to pull off with another articulated figure. Yeah, sure, other companies have produced much more articulated figures of aliens, but to be able to get a pose like this is not usually something you'd be able to succeed to do unless they already had pre-molded the body to be able to accommodate that. Ironically enough, even though this guy has fallen over, maybe it's been 18 times, 18, 19, I've lost count. Even though the figure has fallen over as much as it has, I seem to have more of a struggle actually getting him to stand properly with the straight legs, simply just because Mezco didn't decide to instead use ball joints for its angles, where you could actually adjust the feet on an ankle tilt, but instead they only just peg the feet in place. And the feet, because they don't sit leveled on a shelf, he has a real tough time and a real difficult time to get to stand properly. That, and how many times the jaw has fallen out, that little tiny chomper that he has inside of his jaw, how many times that's fallen out, are only the real two problems I have with the figure. The rest of it is a really nice looking piece. And even though I probably won't be displaying it on my shelf, always spinning around like this, I actually kind of like the idea of displaying him in a crouched position like this. Again, I really like the idea that Mezco decided to include it. The figure has lots of accessories too. Drool, the little mouth guard that he has on the body. It's not really a mouth guard, but it comes with some swappable hands, and of course it comes with two variations of the egg. You can display with the facehugger inside, or you can just leave it and have it closed shut if you'd rather have it instead. Not all people are going to dig the design of MDS. MDS are always known for having more smaller proportions bodies, oversized heads. But it actually works really well with the big chap. Big chap is always known to have a big head anyways. I know I'm going to really wrap this up quickly. Because the big chap's always been known to have a big head anyways, it lends really well to the idea of an MDS design. Oversized heads, slightly smaller bodies. I just wish the figure could stand a lot better. Not this one, not the one that we were looking at right now, but I wish it could stand a lot better with the straighter legs. What do you guys think of the figure? Let me know down below in the comments section. And as I did mention at the beginning of this review, I did actually find this one over on Entertainment Earth. It was hot off the truck, which means I think that they actually just got the stock into their warehouse. So if you guys are interested and would like to pick up one for yourself and maybe haven't had much luck finding this one locally, you can click the link down below and it'll take you on over to Entertainment Earth's website. Also, if you enjoyed this video, I know I really don't want to have to do this again. If you enjoyed this video, hit it with a like. Seriously, this is like the 19th time, maybe 20th time, maybe the 20th time we've actually done the final looks on this figure. If you enjoyed this video, why not hit it with a like? If you're loving the content you're seeing and certainly want to stick around for more, don't fall over. Please, please, please. Make sure you hit the subscribe button and turn on the bell notification. Popping up at the very end of this video as well is also a playlist of all the other Mezco figures I've looked at over the years, with many more to follow. And as always, guys, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.